This is Things Police See, First-Hand Accounts, with your host, Steve Gould.
Hey guys, welcome to the podcast that interviews active and retired police officers about their most intense, bizarre, and sometimes humorous moments on the job. I am indeed Steve Gould. Thank you for being here with us, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. Things have been going swimmingly, guys, with the podcast. I'm using technology like you wouldn't believe. I got a scheduling app. I had to send the link. People schedule. With that being said, I'm doing pretty good on bookings. But if you're on the fence, or you're listening in your cruiser, or your mom or dad or brother or sister is a cop, and you think they would be good for the show, I would love to have them on. Send them to thingspolicey.com. Scroll down, be a guest. Click that, and let's do it. Let's keep this baby rolling. That's why a lot of you guys listen, is because you love the stories, the fly on the wall nature of the show, hearing what the men and women of law enforcement really go through. So if you are out there and that's you, we want to hear your stories. If you're on the job, we don't have to mention your agency. If you're retired, even better, because retired guys, just let it rip, baby. And that's what we like here on the show. So do that if you know somebody, or if you want to be a guest. Been really trying to get an Australian. I have a bunch of countries on the show. Australia is like on lockdown with their police. They really don't let these guys talk. But I would love to get them on. That would be really cool. So if anybody knows a guy or a gal and want to send them my way, thank you. Thank you for all the 5-star reviews on iTunes, or it's not iTunes anymore. It's Apple Podcasts. Please keep those coming. They're rolling in. Like, we're doing really good with that. I'll probably get like 100 or 200 5-star reviews compared to like the 1-star I'll get once in a while, and that's just straight up hater. They don't listen. They just hate cops for being cops, and they just trash the podcast, which sucks that they have the ability to do that. At one point, there was like a campaign of people in the beginning that were like, we're just trashing it, and then you guys battled back with the 5 stars, and I appreciate it, because it's a metric they look at on podcasts for validity and popularity. So thank you for that. Thank you to everybody on Patreon. If you really love the show, you've listened to a lot of episodes, and you think there's a lot of value and entertainment in that, Patreon's a place to be. Join the Patreon community. It's $5 or $10. It's patrolman or sergeant. Pick one of the levels. You get extras. You get videos of the interviews, which I release early a lot of times. You get a vinyl TPS logo sticker. I will mail to you myself. You'll be able to tell by the almost legible handwriting. And you also can get Patron Shoutout at the sergeant level, and ask a question on the show, and I'll answer it. So there's other perks. It's like a little community. It's like a Facebook feed type thing, but just you and the other super hardcore fans are in there. So if you really love the show and do that, I'd really love it. If not, if you can't afford it, it's not in the budget, not something you want to put money towards right now, don't worry about it. The show will continue to be free, and you can keep enjoying it. So, but if you're listening for free, I would definitely highly encourage the 5-star review. Well, now that the housekeeping's out of the way, let's get to our guest. We have retired New Jersey officer, 20 years on the job. He's done accident recon. He attended survival school at West Point. He worked patrol, motorcycle squad, the emergency response team. He's also a police academy instructor. He's the author of 2 Decades Behind the Badge, One Man's Journey in Law Enforcement. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Kurt Geisinger. Kurt!
Hi, Steve.
Hey.
Hello. Thank you for having me on the show.
My pleasure, brother. Thank you for coming on. And I don't want to pat myself in the back too hard, but I did nail the last name.
Thank you very much. Not a lot of people do.
There was a rehearsal involved. I was like, Geisinger, right? He's like, yes.
Right.
Stop asking me. So, 20 years in New Jersey. That was enough. 20 years is enough for anybody, I think. Does New Jersey offer like a pretty good retirement at 20 years? Like, you were comfortable just piecing out?
Yeah, well, you can retire after 20 years, but you get less of a percentage in your pension.
I understand. So you probably have a side gig going on. You're writing books.
Yeah, I'm writing books. I still have a side job where I enjoy working at. So, I keep myself busy.
I bet. Yeah, I think 20 years. A long time ago in Massachusetts, they made a 25-75 deal with the troopers. So 25 in, they get 75%. It's kind of a way to keep the force younger, get them moving out. And they were, when it first happened, they were like, oh, this is coming for, city municipal guys soon. Never worked its way down the line to us. They've actually made it worse. I'm in the old deal for retirement, so I can do 32 years till I get 80. And the new guy, and I can retire at 55. The new guys, I think, have to work till 60 to get 80. So the deal is getting worse and worse.
It is.
Which sucks. Is that New Jersey the same way? Are they looking at the retirement system and going, we're gonna have to unsweeten this deal a little bit?
Well, they're constantly changing the retirement system. I mean, now, back when I retired, you could be basically any age. I started when I was 26 and retired when I was 47.
Gotcha. That's good. I think that's smart. I was 26 also when I started, but I took a little 4-year siesta to California, so I'm kind of gonna be older now.
Right.
Which, I'm glad I did it. It was a great experience, but now that I'm looking at the retirement numbers again, I'm like, ooh, my buddies will be getting out before me. In general, the place in New Jersey you policed, was it pretty populated?
It was about just shy of 20 square miles. The population was somewhere between 25 to 30,000 people. So it was a suburban area.
Okay, so let me guess. Every state does it different, and it depends on the taxes the town gets. Were you 25,000? Were you like 50 officers?
No, actually, it was around. It varied between 35 to 40 officers. It depended on whether or not certain people retired, like a mass retirement, or if they had new hires. So it was usually up around closest to about 40 officers.
It also, I was close. And it also depends how much they're liking you at the time, right?
Right, exactly.
So are we going to pull back? Are we going to give them new positions? I get it. So Kurt, take us in the Wayback Machine. Take us to a young officer, Geisinger, on the job. The first call you went to that was, you would consider like a hot call. The first call that, got the old ticker pumping harder than normal.
Well, one of the first calls I dealt with, as far as a hot call is concerned, we had a factory in town. It was in the north end of town. And one of the employees had apparently got into an argument with his supervisor regarding overtime shift.
Sounds like a police station.
Yeah, pretty much. But this argument got so out of control that the guy who worked there, the employee, stabbed his boss with an ice pick.
Ooh.
But the boss survived. He was all right. He was actually standing and talking to us the whole time. But we took the guy down at gunpoint. Got the ice pick away from him, of course. Locked him up. The boss ended up going to the hospital. He recovered, and the guy who stabbed him, obviously he was tried and convicted, for the aggravated assault. But it left me wondering, how upset do you have to be over an overtime shift? I've lost out on overtime. I never went on a stabbing spree.
Yeah.
And I also couldn't help but wonder, who brings an ice pick to work? Unless you're a bartender, there's no need for it.
So this is not a job that would necessitate an ice pick in any way?
No, not at all. It was a manufacturing company.
Okay. Well, people get, the stress of your finances can really bring out the worst in people. People get, especially, I've seen guys work themselves up if they start really personalizing it. If a guy starts saying things like, "You're taking money from my family, you're taking food out of my kid's mouth," like that type of stuff, you could see a guy like that. Maybe they probably had they obviously had some back and forth over the years or months about that. And the guy probably worked himself into a fervor and just went nuts with it. He was probably like, "Casey pisses me off too much. I'm going to go ahead and take this ice pick into work."
Yeah, exactly.
Damn.
Yeah, I'm sure it was just building up like dominoes, and eventually that one domino fell, and everything just went to hell.
Man, Can you imagine making a decision like that and then sitting in jail for years and being like, man, if I could only have not lost it in that moment.
Oh yeah, I can only imagine.
What a disaster. So you get there, you take him down at gunpoint. Was he immediately receptive to it? Did he just throw the thing, or did he get on the ground like, whoa?
Not immediately. We told him, drop the ice pick, and he just stood there, sort of like a deer in the headlights type of look. And once we had our weapons out, he realized we weren't there to play games. He just tossed it and just went face down, hands out.
Gotcha. And did you get an opportunity to interview him, or did the detectives take over or whatever?
No, the detective bureau took over after that.
Did he say were you privy to any of the reasons he gave besides overtime?
No, it's just like you said, it was an ongoing situation with his boss, and it just escalated to the point where he stabbed him.
Dang. Well, nowadays they just you don't just shoot, attack your boss. You shoot everybody at work.
Right. Unfortunately, yeah.
Which is not a great trend that's happening, by the way, everybody. All right. So what did he end up doing for time?
Time-wise, I'm not entirely sure. I think it was somewhere between 7 to 10 years.
Oh, wow. So he did real time.
Yeah, he did hard time.
It's not like now. I just had an interview with a buddy of mine that will be coming out a couple weeks from now. And he works Long Island and right next to New York City. And you pretty much probably you might even get out on that right now. Like they're just letting these guys go.
Yeah, well, that happened with COVID. Once COVID hit, a lot of the jails and the prisons just started releasing the prisoners who they didn't consider that much of a threat.
Yeah, they did it in California when we were there, and it was creepy because the sheriff would release a notice. Hey, today we're releasing so many thousand people into your communities. And it's like, well, thanks for the heads up, I guess. Could you just hold on to them, maybe?
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, these weren't people get this thing in their head they were just caught smoking a joint. No, these are violent criminals and rapists that they shaved off some of their sentences and let them go. It was, and it immediately started causing a crime uptick. It was a very bad idea.
Yeah, you can't help but wonder what's the point of sentencing someone to jail if you're just going to release them.
Yeah, I've had people civilians talking to civilians. I've had them say to me, if they see the jail cells, or at one point I was talking about we might get a new cell in this part of the station, and I was giving a tour of the police department, and this lady was like a cage. I was like, yeah, it's like a cage but for people. And she's like, right. I'm like, we call them cells, and she's like you want to you're gonna put a human in a cage? And this guy in the tour looked at her and he was like, it's jail. What do you think they're going to do?
That's the whole idea.
Yeah, you lost your freedom. You're going into a little cage. But she was looking at it like it was like a dog kennel or something. It's like, no, we feed them and stuff, but their freedom is restricted by definition of arrest. I mean, that's what's happening.
Right.
But I think a lot of people just live pretty good lives. And I think when they really process the idea of taking somebody into custody, nothing they're familiar with at all. They think it's inhumane and crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you hear a lot of stories about people who are under arrest or this or that. Most notably is El Chapo, the Mexican crime boss. He was offering a fortune to people who, if they would just let him go. So when you take a look at that, his freedom was more important to him than the money.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Good point. I mean, he's the one where they built the little tunnel, right? And he had a scooter.
That was him.
He'd let himself out. It's how do you build a mining tunnel? I don't know how long it was, but it was come on. I mean, obviously everybody's on the payroll at that point, right?
I think the tunnel is actually about 1.5 miles long.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, they had tunneled through. They went in there under the guise that they were a construction crew working down from the jail. They tunneled through. They actually built a cart for him out of a motorcycle with a motorcycle engine. He tunneled out of there and rode it to his freedom.
Wow. That's crazy, man. That's unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, you're probably at this point not that upset you're not a cop anymore.
No, I mean, there's certain aspects of the job that I miss, but it's just, it's sort of a relief. It's like a weight off your shoulders once you're retired.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you're going through like a tough period at work, or you had a traumatic call or something, and then like the next couple of weeks you kind of have a knot in your stomach going into work. You're like, I don't really want to.
Yeah, exactly. Well, what you have to do is just try to focus on something other than the call. I mean, you were there to make a difference, not make it worse.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Kurt, can you tell us about a strange or bizarre thing in?
Okay. I started writing a few things down. I put in my book, and even some that I didn't.
Yeah, let it rip, brother.
A lot of bizarre calls. I was on one call. It started out as a simple call. It was a relatively simple call. Some woman heard a noise in her house. She kept hearing this creaking sound in her house. She was an elderly woman, lived by herself, and so we were called there because to investigate. She wanted to see where the noise was coming from. We get to the house. Long story short, we checked the house. We checked upstairs, downstairs. There's nothing in there. And I'm talking to the woman, and I noticed on her kitchen counter, there's this beautiful marble box, this green marble box. So I pick it up, sort of like you would examine a Rubik's Cube. It was a little bit bigger than that. I'm holding the box, I'm turning it around and this and that, trying to figure out what it is. And she said, just so you know, my husband's ashes are in there. And the small box next to him is the dog.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, another strange call we had is I investigated an alarm. And as I'm checking the house, it's all locked up, nothing appeared wrong. I started hearing screaming coming from the house, someone shouting, "I'm going to kill you all. You're all going to die. Don't, stay away from me. I'm going to shoot you right now." So obviously I get out of there, head back to my car, radio in headquarters what's going on. We have an officer respond back, and I'm telling him I know what I heard. So we're checking out the house, debating whether or not to call a SWAT team over this. And we hear, "You're all dead. You're all dead. You're all going to die." And so we go around to the back of the house to see if we can gain access. We get into the house, and we can still hear it's a young kid, teenager, shouting this. He's in his room, has the door shut. We walk in there. He's wearing headphones, and he's playing he's playing an online game like Call of Duty or something with his friends, and it was him shouting at his friends, not at us. So we go in there, guns drawn. I swear, I think the kid must have wet his pants or something because we went in there. We were ready for a gunfight, a real gunfight.
Yeah.
He has no idea we even came in the house or heard us knocking or anything.
I like he's yelling loud enough that you can hear him outside.
Yeah. He was shouting. Hopefully next time he just keeps the windows shut or doesn't shout.
Yeah. That's the online gaming stuff's a problem. We've had I went on a pretty serious swatting call because of that. Kid from Russia swatted this other kid in the town I was working in, and on the 911 call, like faked an American accent. He had it so that the call came from the States. Like they can do anything digitally now, and it was like a problem house. So we were like, yeah, this is not a good house. Like there's problems there. And they said, I've cut my mom's head off. And when you come here, they looked at Google Street View, so they knew what the house looked like. And we thought it was the real deal. I was like, because this was the beginning of swatting. It was like 2015, 14. And, man, it was screwed up. The mom ended up walking out of the house and being like, we had rifles, and she's like, what's going on? And we told her, and it was like, she was like You know, the classic, like, oh, well, I won't let them play for like a couple nights for punishment. We're like, yeah, maybe there might be other issues to address, but thanks for that. So yeah, the online stuff gets people ramped up.
Yeah, it certainly does. I mean, you meet all sorts of characters on this job. We had one woman. She used to call all the time. The first time I dealt with her, she stated that her ex-boyfriend, came into her house and started moving stuff around, you know, to annoy her. And I asked her, "Does he have a key?" She says, "Yeah, he has a key, but I changed the lock, so he can't get in." So I go out, I examine the entire exterior of the house. There's no sign of forced entry, no sign of forced entry whatsoever. I said, "Look, there's no way he came in the house. It's impossible." And she explained to me in detail that what he does is he makes himself as flat as a piece of paper, slides slides under the door, and comes in the house that way.
Well, that
She's
makes
like,
sense.
yeah, I'm thinking, oh, so I even said to her, I said, okay, now I know exactly what I'm dealing with here.
Yeah.
And yeah, she went on with all sorts of calls about, you know, she had stairs leading to her attic, and he wouldn't leave footprints because he could magically float his way into the attic.
Of
I
course.
mean, you got to sympathize with people like that. But the thing is, they're not a danger to themselves or anyone
Yeah.
else. So you can't really just lock them up.
Right. Is this an older lady? Like, is this a dementia thing, or is she just like kind of cuckoo?
No, she was a little cuckoo. She wasn't older. I would say I would put her in her 40s or 50s.
Boy, oh boy, that's young.
Yeah, it certainly is.
Oh
She
my.
eventually moved, though, and that was the end of that.
Yeah, we all the communities have houses like that, don't we? Where it's like you get the call and it's like, Barbara said there's a Asian guy on her roof looking down her chimney again. It's like, that's exactly a call I had, was like this Asian people running around her roof and like looking in her windows, and they got in the house, and you just go there and it's kind of like, well, they're gone now. They must have seen me coming. They're probably not coming back for the night, because you want the rest of your shift to be peaceful. So you're like, they're gone until probably day shift. Then they'll probably be back.
Yeah, exactly. We had one elderly woman in town. We used to be there, you know, almost every day for something. She would call the police to turn down her air conditioner. She called us one day because one of the pictures in her house was tilted to the side. So I asked her how did it happen. She said her neighbors have magical powers and they must have moved the picture, and it became such a frequent thing. And I said, don't you have a family member you can call? And she said, yeah, I have a son. He lives one town over, but for some reason he's not picking up the phone anymore.
Yeah, why? I wonder why.
Yeah, I can't imagine why.
That's funny. Kurt, do you have? Can you tell us about your most intense or terrifying call you went to?
One of the most intense calls I had was actually a motor vehicle accident that I handled. We had a garbage truck that was rounding a corner. The garbage truck stopped, and the lifter, or the guy who empties the garbage, so the lifter was dumping garbage into the back. A car came around the bend and ran right into him at full speed. She wasn't speeding, but she was doing the speed limit.
Yeah.
She ran right into him, blew his leg right off.
Oh,
And
she must have been flying.
Oh yeah, she well, like I said, she was doing a speed limit, but you know that's all it takes if you got 4,000 pounds of metal hitting you.
Yeah.
And plus the shape of the back of the garbage truck itself. So his leg was cut off. We actually called for a helicopter, a medevac, to take him to the hospital. Unfortunately, he didn't survive. I think he passed away either before or during his flight to the hospital.
Oh, just too much blood loss.
Yeah, just it was like a river of blood. But thankfully, the one thing that happened, you know, just by coincidence, a trauma nurse happened to be passing by the scene. She stopped to help out. She was able to control the bleeding to an extent, you know. So, but unfortunately, he died, and it was a real mess. But the one thing that always stuck with me is as I'm processing the scene, we can't move the truck yet, obviously, or the car.
Yeah.
I found his work boot sitting somewhere underneath the truck. So I reached under the truck, picked up his work boot, and I'll never forget the guy's foot was still in it.
Yeah.
I almost threw up. It was just insane. It really was.
How heavy was that boot when you picked it up? Heavy, right?
It was just, well, once I realized there was a foot in it, the boot felt like it weighed 100 pounds.
Yeah, my dad actually got an award. He was a cop for 32 years on Cape Cod. And he went to a motorcycle accident where a guy's leg got torn off, but he was wearing those tall Harley Davidson boots, the tall, like almost like some cops use in like like dress uniform, that like,
yeah, we had those,
like trooper boots, and it's a big thing in New Jersey, Massachusetts. And my dad saw the boot in the woods, and so he had been tending to the guy who had no leg, and then he saw the boot, and he actually found the guy's. He went to pick the boot up, and it like slipped out of his hands. He's like, "Heavy boot," and he looked in it, and it was like a cross section of the guy's leg.
Oh my God!
It was his whole leg. So he ran back to the ambulance and threw it in the ambulance, and they took it back. And I got to ask him if they reattached it, but he got an award for it, finding this. As a cop, you go to so many things that are traumatic, and like you're really putting yourself out there. But like one of the things he got an award for was like retrieving a guy's leg.
Yeah, well, that's the one thing that always fascinated me. I mean, it's great to get recognized, get an award, but a lot of times you don't. I never felt like I needed to be awarded for something I was paid to do in the first place.
Right.
It's always nice to be recognized.
Yeah, absolutely. Another time he had a bad crash, and he put his foot. It was this woman who terribly broke her leg, and he put her into traction on the side of the road. He put his foot in her crotch and pulled her leg back and like relieved the whatever was going on. And I was like, I would never do that. Like, so to say, I'm like, he was just good with stuff like that. I'm just like, I go to a bad medical call, I just put like a blanket over it. I'm like, well, we're going to wait for them to show up that know what they're doing. We do have tourniquets now. Do you guys have tourniquets when the guy got his leg torn off?
We don't have. At that time, we didn't have tourniquets, but you could use basically anything you needed, to tie off a tourniquet. You could use the guy's belt or something.
Right. So you guys didn't have like the issued tourniquets, but did you try to tourniquet his leg?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, the trauma nurse who was assisting him, she had already tied it off. She had a piece of scrap material or something she used to tie it off the best she could.
Yeah, geez. Yeah, we have tourniquets now. It's like I came back on the job. I took a 4-year break and came back, and now it's like now there's tourniquets. It's like, and they're good. It's good to have, and not just for us, but like to use on other people. But it's like, geez, is there anything else they would like us to carry on this belt? It's like there's so many things. Thank goodness I have one of those weight-bearing vests, so they're like that helps a lot. But it's like, I just feel like the utility belt has gotten out of it. It's like next we're going to have shark spray, like freaking Batman. We have like everything on there.
Yeah, exactly. Plus that belt over the years, it takes its toll on you. You end up with sciatica or back pain or all sorts of issues.
Yeah, that's
carried all that weight.
Absolutely. That's how they sold it around here was, when I took, I did 10 years and took a little break, and actually 14 years total in law enforcement, and then took a break. We're in a duty belt for 14 years, and like I noticed my hip flexors and my lower back were like always achy, especially if I did like a double. Never mind if there was like a canine track and I had to be the guy to go with the canine guy. At the end of that, you're like, ooh, my hips are killing me. So when I got back into law enforcement, they're like, the chief I work for now is like, hey, just another perk to working here is we have the load-bearing vests. And I was like, what are those? He's like, yeah, it's like you can put your stuff up on your body. I've worked for almost 2 years now back in the game. I've not had a single day where my back or hips have hurt. Completely solved it.
Right.
I mean,
yeah, it makes a huge difference. I mean, you're using your shoulders and a lot more area of your body rather than just your hips to support everything that you carry.
Yeah, I mean, the military's been doing it forever. They get it. They know that that's what we're supposed to do. So, like, but I mean, it sounds like you're from a agency that's not huge. It's kind of a hard sell. Like, people want you to look like the Norman Rockwell cop.
Right.
They want you the nice boots, the cross strap, the metal badge. They want you to look, and I agree, that looks great. But functional wise, not great.
No, as a matter of fact, over a couple of years before I retired, you actually had the option of wearing something like that. They switched to the nylon belts and
Yep.
rather than the leather, and you had the option for the vest and all that. But I was just set in my ways at that point, so I just stuck with the leather belt, the old school look, so to speak.
Yeah. People don't like the vest because it looks militaristic, and I do agree. It looks a little bit more aggressive, but they just need to think of it like the gear was down here, now it's up here. It's in the same spot, but it's up here. It's like really, it's not that different. But I've seen locally in the small towns around me, they've sold it with the studies for the lower back. They're like, listen, do you want to own a guy for his whole career because he throws his back out, or do you want to let him wear this vest?
Yeah, exactly. Even when I was on the motorcycle squad, the jacket we wore was actually designed to have the belt go around the waist of the jacket, and it was such a huge difference. It really was. Plus, also, if it were summertime and you weren't wearing your coat, we would wear the strap that goes across your chest, diagonally, on both the front and rear of your holster, and that made a huge difference. It really did.
The Sam Brown, like connecting.
Yeah, the Sam Brown.
Yeah, I really like what motor cops wear. I love the boots and I love the white traffic. Because we always have to wear yellow. But I love how the motor cops wear the white with the big boots. I think it looks badass. I think it's cool.
Yeah. The boots were actually pretty comfortable, and in the summertime they didn't really get that hot. They looked like they would be sweltering in those things, but never had a problem with them. They were comfortable.
I like them. Every once in a while, Massachusetts will do a breakdown in like the Boston Herald or whatever about the cost of a trooper's uniform. Because troopers, it seems like a trooper thing state to state. They need to have like that presence, that look. They want, like New Jersey state troopers, same way.
Right.
They look kind of similar to Mass state troopers. They kind of have the French blue and then the darker pants. But they're it's so expensive. The boots are like almost $1,000. The pants, the riding breeches they wear, because they're like legit, like riding breeches, are $200. Like, wow. and it just goes on. So they'll do like the whole outfit in the paper and be like, trooper class A or whatever it is. It's like whatever they wear in the winter, cost X, Y, and Z, and people are like, oh my gosh, that's insane.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, as a matter of fact, a lot of that stuff, it'll eat up your uniform allowance right away if you have a uniform allowance. I mean, I think the first year we had a bike, I must have spent probably 80% of it on the motorcycle gear.
Oh, yeah. Hey, maybe you can confirm this for me, Kurt. What I've heard is that Hitler, I always like to bring Hitler up in an episode. Hitler came to Massachusetts. He did a tour of Massachusetts up into Maine, and he saw the Mass State Police, and that's who he based the Waffen SS after. Have you heard the same thing?
Yeah, I've heard a very similar story, except it was the story I heard. It was the New Jersey State Police.
Of course.
It was the New Jersey State Police, and apparently, I don't know how true this is.
Yeah.
But apparently, General Norman Schwarzkopf, his father is actually the person who designed that type of trooper uniform. Like I said, I could be wrong, but that's what I've heard.
Interesting. And like I said, the New Jersey and the Mass State Police outfits are like, they're almost the same, except New Jersey has the bright yellow triangles they wear for collar brass. But besides that, it's almost the same uniform. It's just funny. I wonder what the truth is, because both agency is like, a nation based their whole thing on me. No, it was New Jersey.
Right.
I wonder what the truth.
I always heard New Jersey. That's the way I heard it. But of course, if I went up by you, it'd be Massachusetts.
Yeah. That's funny. That's too funny. Kurt, can you tell us about a positive, or dare I say heartwarming situation you dealt with while you were on the job?
Yeah, one of the first things that comes to mind is we had a medical call. God, this must be going back about a good 15 years or so. We had a medical call. It was a cardiac arrest. There was a woman in, I'd say, mid to late 60s, went into cardiac arrest. We got to the house. We were there in, less than a minute. We just happened to be in the area. When I say we, it was me and 2 other patrol cars.
Mm-hmm.
We got there, started CPR right away. We put the defib on her. And after we were doing the CPR, we started with the defib, and it shocked her. She took the full first 3 shocks.
Took the ride.
It got her heart moving again, enough where it could beat on its own. Then she went back into cardiac arrest. She took 3 more shocks from the defib. We continued CPR. In the meantime, the ambulance showed up along with the paramedics. She was placed in the ambulance, rushed off to the hospital, and in the end, she made a full recovery from her cardiac arrest. And she came into police headquarters a couple months later to thank us all. And in addition to that, me and the other responding officers were also given an award from the American Heart Association down in at a breakfast down in Newark, New Jersey. And she was there, the woman who had the cardiac arrest. She was there and thanked us. And she was obviously very emotional to be there, to be alive.
Sure.
And I'll never forget that. What a great feeling it was.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a reporter there. I think it was Channel 12, New Jersey Channel 12. She came up to me and with the microphone, and she says, "How does it feel to be a hero?" And I said, "Look, we're not heroes. We're guys who did our job. We worked as a team in unison, and thankfully we were able to bring her back, and she could share this awesome day with us. She's here because we were trained properly. And at the department, I used to be a CPR instructor, and also up at the academy. And it's just such a great feeling to know that somebody's still alive because of you and the other guys I was with. It's just amazing."
Yeah. Isn't it crazy how dead somebody can look and then come back?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, that reminds me of a call I was on. I walked into a house one day. They reported that it appeared that his mother passed away. And I see this frail old woman just laying there. She must have been, in her 80s or 90s, barely weighed maybe 80, 90 pounds. And I walk up to her. She's laying on her back. Her mouth is open. Eyes are open. I'm thinking she's long gone. So I just sort of look down. I'm trying to, feel if she's breathing. I put my fingers on her neck to check her carotid pulse.
Sure.
And as soon as I did that, she sat straight up and said, "Can I get a glass of water?" It took
you were like
every cell of my body not to start screaming and run out of the house.
Yeah. I had. It is funny when you think somebody's dead. I had the ER call one night, and they say one of our nurses did not show up for her midnight shift. She has worked here for like 20 years and has never not shown up. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, we're very worried about her. So I go to the house, pull in the driver, car's there, run the plate. It's her car. Knock on the door, nothing. I walk up the stairs in her house. I'm announcing myself like crazy because I don't want someone to shoot me. I'm like, police, anybody home? What's going on? Police are here. I go up. I see her in bed, and she looks friggin' dead. She just looks dead. She looks washed out. Like, I'm like, oh man, this nurse, all these years of service, whatever. I go to stand over her, and I'm gonna touch her, and she sits up and screams and scares the hell out of me. Turns out she was just very sick. She was very sick, and so sick she didn't even like set her alarm or tell work that she wasn't coming in. But I've never been so scared in my life when she sat up. I was like, oh, I thought she was dead,
Yeah, I know the feeling.
My dad had one like that. He went to the house, newspapers piling up, well-being check. You think, you're going to go in, there's going to be an odor, and you're going to find, an unattended. He goes in, guy's bare-ass naked, lying next to the slider that goes up to the backyard. There's poop all over the floor, and there's a streak of poop down the blind, or not blinds, but curtain for the slider. Like, he grabbed it and slid down and died. And he's just there, eyes partially open, like he starts calling it in, starts calling for call it CPAC, like the homicide team and all that, for an unattended. And the guy goes and takes a breath, and my dad's like, put a pause on that. He starts trying to attend to the guy, but he said the guy looks so just bare ass. It's funny when someone, it's not that uncommon when someone goes to the bathroom or showers or whatever, and they feel like, you get in a panic when you feel like your body's failing. So they'll do things, they get panicky because they can feel it coming on. And this guy apparently didn't obviously fully die. So that scared the hell out of my dad, which made me feel good, because my dad was the kind of cop I hear from other people that just calm, cool all the time. Nothing really. Me, I absorb trauma. I was like, oh my gosh, this was terrible. There's blood everywhere. Him, it was and to this day, he's in his 70s now. He's just living his life. He's fine. Nothing. It's a chill dude,
Right.
I get a lot of my mom. My mom was like the little Irish lady, sweetest lady in the world. Warrior. Just always just thinking the worst is going to happen. So I'm half my mom, half my dad. If I was more my mom, I don't think I'd be able to do the job at all. I would just be wrecked.
Right, exactly. Well, that's one of the things with the job. It's not like a typical job where you can go into work every day and your whole day's planned out for you.
Right.
I mean, what you get is what you get. You might go the whole day and have maybe 10 calls turn out to be nothing, or you might be jumping from one to the other in absolute chaos, total bedlam. You never know. And that I always thought was a pretty interesting part of the job. You never know what you're going to get.
Yeah. I mean, how many times you've been towards the end of shift, you come in for roll call, whatever, the boots are up, and you're just kind of thinking about grilling or whatever you're going to do when you go home. And then boom, everything happens. Horrific, terrible crash or suicide or something. And you're like, damn, I guess I ain't going home. And and on top of that, I got to deal with this.
Yeah. I remember one day when I was sitting at the pumps, and another officer, we were gassing up our cars at the town pumps. We had about 30 minutes left on the shift. And he says to me, we're almost done. I hope nothing happens.
Oh, he cursed you.
I said to him, hey, Jimmy, don't worry. It's only 30 minutes. What could possibly happen? And I thought he was going to strangle me when I said that, but I couldn't resist.
Yeah. So I've said before on the show, never say the Q word.
Right.
You pull up, I'll pull up to another cop from another bordering town, pull up, window to window. How's it been going? Good. How's the night been? Fine. Right. We're not going to say quiet. You never say quiet.
Yeah, we had one guy, we used to bust his chops, when we were leaving, we were done with our shift. He was starting a shift. We would say, see you later. Hope you don't get a domestic tonight.
What a prick.
Couldn't resist.
Yeah, that's totally cop sense of humor. Yeah. That's great. Kurt, can you tell us about wait, I gotta rephrase this. Wrong question. So one question we asked that's very popular with people, especially people thinking about getting into law enforcement, or maybe they're going through the process with backgrounds, or maybe they're just about to start academy. I get a lot of emails from people, and it's my favorite email when they're like, I've been listening to the podcast and listening to the interviews, and your guests have like really inspired me to actually do it. And that's like my favorite email to get. So what sage advice would you offer to these people that are just getting into it?
Well, as a matter of fact, I made a few notes of advice. First of all, don't get discouraged. I mean, the job right now might seem like it's impossible to get, and don't put all your eggs in one basket by just applying to one town or only the state police or anything like that. I applied to all sorts of different towns.
Get in where you can.
Yeah, get in where you can. And like the saying goes, beggars can't be choosers.
Yep.
Just get your foot in the door, and if you're in the academy or already went through the selection process and you're hired or you're going to be hired, the way I always viewed it is that was the hardest part of the job, was to get it. Now, let's say you're in the academy. That, for me, it was 18 weeks. And, they made your life a live in hell for 18 weeks.
Sure.
But that's the last hurrah. Once you graduate the academy, you did it. You made it. The hardest part is done. You got hired. And once you are hired, a lot of people are going to give you advice, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be good advice. You might have senior guys, senior patrolmen, senior supervisors giving you advice that, they might be, tired of the job or something like that.
Yeah.
So you want to take advice with a grain of salt. Because when I first got hired, and my chief handed me the badge, he said, have fun, be honest, and choose your friends wisely. And I never forgot those words.
Yeah, usually agencies are pretty careful. Like, you don't want to put, especially before FTO was a big thing, and break-in was just like, you go with the senior guy in the shift, and he breaks you in. Well, I think agencies were hip to what you're saying. You don't want to put the kid with the malcontent, with the guy that's going to drive around and just talk smack about the chief, talk smack about the sergeant, tell you all the reasons why this place is terrible, why you shouldn't try, why what you're doing is there's no purpose to it, because you're just going against the tide the whole time. You're never going to make headway. I rode with people like that. People that were like, they'll beat a young guy down. They take the wind out of your sails, and that's the opposite of what you want.
Yeah, exactly. And the most important part, I could see it in you, and certainly with me, is you have to maintain that sense of humor.
Yeah.
You have to sort of look at the funny side of things. It might be a sad call, but you might be able to see something or learn something from that call, and maintain your sense of humor. And also, if you're new or you've been there a few years, you might enjoy a certain thing about that job. For me, it was investigating accidents. So I would constantly ask to go to these accident investigation courses. And I ended up taking Crash 1, Crash 2, Vehicle Dynamics, Crash
Super smart, too, because insurance companies love guys like you.
Yeah, they certainly do. It's just great information to have, because people are trying to explain something, and you have to tell them, no, the way you explained it defies the laws of physics.
Right.
And you have to, and suddenly the story will start to change.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to go back to what you said earlier, academy graduation, and this is like so corny, but it was like one of the happiest days of my life. Graduating from police academy. I mean, college was good. Wedding was the best. Birth of my first child was the best. But right behind those, ahead of college actually, is police academy. And I think we went to, ours was a 21-week police academy. And, it was paramilitary. It was not sleepover, but it was like, they gave you enough stuff where you had to get up at 4 a.m. the next day, every day, to iron your uniforms. My wife to be at the time had to help iron. I was doing to-froms all night, reports, and then strenuous stuff all day. And when you start to get to the end, when you can like taste it, like you're like, you are so excited to get in a patrol car, to actually do the stuff that's been hammered into your head. And it's so important to go through an academy like that, to really earn it. And you get that badge. And at my academy, I got, I've always been good with firearms. So I got the Top Gun Award for shooting. And I got to like go across the stage and get the award and do the salute and about face. And I was not in the military. I was never like part of that type of ceremony. And to me, it was so cool, and you just feel so great. It just was the best.
Yeah, it certainly is. Even in my book, I dedicated an entire chapter to the academy. Just from the first day you walk in there, you're standing in formation, and you can't do anything right. No matter what you do, right. You did it wrong.
Just know it's a game.
Exactly. And don't look the instructors in the eye and things like this. And we were allowed up to 10 gigs before they kicked you out. A gig could be anything.
Yeah.
You had a piece of lint on your uniform, or your shoes weren't tied, properly, or God knows, anything they could think of.
Yeah, they used to call us in the morning. We'd have formation at like 7 a.m. and they would call you the khaki monkeys, because we're all khaki, and we're just picking stuff off each other. Like making sure we look good, polishing the tips of those boots. Your squad leaders would go around because they don't want to get gigged. Like just making sure everything is perfect. And we started at Memorial Hall in Plymouth. Was day one, and that's when they shout at you the most, and everything's wrong and you can't do anything. And I remember I looked into we're just standing there in formation, or like in a line, and I looked in just for a second like that into the girls' bathroom, and a DI saw it, and he was like, he was looking for anything, and he's like, "Gold, do you want to use a ladies' restroom? Are you a lady? Get in the restroom." I find myself in the restroom alone with the DI, and he's just screaming at me, but it's echoing out out to everybody else, and everybody else is just loving it. Like, oh, he's drawing the fire right now. It was just, and I knew enough to know, like, the guy's not going to boot me for this. He just, he's trying to get us in the groove of the academy, what they expect. And, the whole process of like building you up and then breaking you down and then building you up again. It's like it's a roller coaster.
Right.
There's a formula. Like they want to build you up and then break you down again. And then right before graduation, when we all thought we were coasting, break you down the hardest. None of you are going to graduate. This will be the first time in history no one graduates from a Massachusetts Police Academy. You are idiots. The whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
And then, of course, you graduate, and it's great. And then we had a big party, and at the end, the DIs were there, and they were like, drinking beers with us and having it. I was like, oh my gosh, they're normal people. Like you almost idolize them at that point. You're like, this person has had so much command over your life for the last 6 months that you're just like, to have a beer with them is like the best feeling in the world.
Yeah, I remember that our graduation that night. It's the same thing. We went out to some dinner, and the DIs were there. They shook your hand. They talked to you,
normal,
like normal, like a man. They talk to you. You're like, wow, he's a real person.
Yeah,
he's an all right guy.
Yeah, I really hope they don't. With the climate now, I hope they don't soften that, because that feeling of really earning something and going through something collectively with another group of cops, I think is so valuable. I really hope they don't pull back on that. Just keep the foot on the gas.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it's an experience in and of itself, and plus the way I always viewed it. And I would tell this to a new person: if you can't handle getting screamed at in the academy, called names, insulted, put downs, you're simply not going to make it on the street. If you can't take it from your DIs, you're not going to take it from total strangers.
Right. Yeah, we had one kid in our academy that was like nice kid, but like very milquetoast, very laid back. too laid back. Like he never screwed up, but he was too laid back. So they actually took him down by himself and were like trying to make him be aggressive, like to like show us how you would deal with this situation. Like they were like really trying to vet him out because they're like, we don't know if this kid's got it. Like he seems too laid back. Like he's just not. He doesn't have that like in him. They wanted to see him lose it. Like just something to have a command presence, you know. Through all the drills we had at the end, he was just kind of like, you know, baseline, never very soft spoken, like never like, you know, never yelled or never like, you know, get out of the car, put the keys on top of the car, face the other way, face away from my voice, get on the ground, you know, like the whole like, you know, felony stop was right. was like whispers, and they were just not having it. So I don't know if he's still on the job. He was actually going to like a more violent city in Massachusetts. Also, he was going to like, I think it was I want to say New Bedford or Brockton, where there's like a lot of shootings and stuff. But I wonder if he's still out there. Is he still doing it? You know, maybe he is. He could be a lieutenant for all I know.
Yeah, who knows?
Who knows? Maybe he was calm, cool, and collected because nothing got under his skin. I don't know.
Yeah, it must be just his disposition, just sort of a, you know, laid back kind of guy, you know, surfer type of attitude.
Exactly, surfer dude. Kurt, tell us a little bit about the book.
All right. Well, my book, I have it right here. It's called 2 Decades Behind the Badge: One Man's Journey in Law Enforcement, and it's. I started writing this back in July of 2021, and it initially just started out where I was just taking notes. You know, because I would tell stories at dinner time, you know, funny stories, or I'd tell my family or friends stories, and they wanted to hear more and more and more. And there was one time I was invited to my son's elementary school a few years ago and to give a speech on career day about being a police officer. So I went in there and, you know, I talked about what the police do all day. And you know, I started telling a few funny stories. And obviously the kids are enjoying it. But I noticed in the back, they had some teachers in the back, and they were just totally enamored by these stories.
People love to hear a cop talk, man.
Yeah, they love to hear stories.
Sure.
So, and one of the teachers said, you should write a book about this. And that's sort of how it started. I just started taking note after note after note. And eventually I started typing them into my computer. And next thing you know, I had about 300 pages of material to write about, you know, from my first day in the academy up until retirement. Just some of the crazy stuff I've seen, you know, different types of education that you get while you're there. And I mean, and the crazy calls, people love that. So I put a lot of those in there.
Yeah.
And, you know, just, you know, all sorts of information and entertaining stories. And eventually I turned it into a book, and I found an editor. I mean, she was aces. She did great work editing for me. And I hired a cover designer also to do the interior layout. She was great. And I'm really proud of the book.
That's great. I see you got all 5-star reviews on Amazon, so it's doing well, man. And it sounds like it's a really like good and nuanced view of like, you know, police work, what it's like, how we're educated, and the calls we go on. It sounds great.
Yeah, I mean, there's everything in there from you know, some of the funniest stuff I've dealt with to some of the saddest, to some of the most traumatic calls that I've seen. Everything from you know, just general humor to, unfortunately, some of the suicides I've seen.
Right.
You know, it just runs a gamut for the entire contents of the book. And at the end of the book, the last 2 chapters, I try to impart a little wisdom into the readers about personal safety, you know, for themselves and also their property. I was listening to one of your most recent shows where you were talking about Facebook.
Yeah.
You were discussing Facebook, and it never ceased to amaze me, some of the information people will put on Facebook.
I know.
They'll take pictures of their cars, their kids, their new Rolex.
Look at this big new TV I got.
Yeah, I just got a 96-inch screen TV. By the way, I'm going on vacation for the next 2 weeks, and
Right.
you don't know who's looking at that. And
Absolutely.
even simple things like don't hide your key under your mat or the flower pot, because that's the first place people look. So
Absolutely.
I dedicated the last 2 chapters. I think it's 16 chapters to just personal safety.
Yeah.
Things I've observed over the years.
That's a great idea. I had Keith from Cop Life podcast on a while back, and he said that, like you get the big screen TV, don't put the cardboard box out by the dumpster in the front of your property. You're just advertising, hey, I just got this Sony whatever. It costs $2,000. It's in the house. And people are going to go by. They're going to see like what cars are normally there, and when they're not there, they'll get themselves that TV. Maybe they'll put it in the box that's on the curb to carry it out.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. Even when I was driving around on patrol, or even on my day off, I'll drive past the house and I'll look at the house. I'll say that person's on vacation. You got 3 newspapers in the driveway. It snowed 4 days ago, but there's no footprints, no tire marks, or nothing.
Right.
So people are on vacation, and it's not just the cops saying who's not home. It's the criminals.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's definitely no one in that house for the past couple of days. I'm going to check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Kurt, thank you so much for giving me your time and coming on the show, brother. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
Oh, my pleasure. And the link to your website and the book will be in the show notes and on my website. So go check Kurt out there. And yeah, man, I appreciate it. And I'm going to do the outro. You mind hanging in the green room for a second?
Absolutely.
The great Kurt Geisinger. Awesome interview. Thank you, Kurt, for coming on. Truly appreciate it. Check out his book that he's published, 2 Decades Behind the Badge, One Man's Journey in Law Enforcement. Guys, thank you for sticking with us on the show. I want to do, before we depart here, I want to do a little something called Roll Call with the Patreon Sergeants. If you want to join, if you want your name read on an episode, go ahead and join the Patreon at the sergeant level, and that's what you'll get. I'm talking about George Tessier, Iceman from Motor Cop Chronicles, Elian Rogers, the great Andrew Horton, the great Ben Peters, Trevor Daly, Rick McCormick, the great Scott Minkler, Parker Brower, Tammy Walsh, Sean Clifford, Braden Walker, Sasha McNabb, Corey Payne, Glenn Topping, the great Mike Wynn, Nathan Gowan, Jason Lau, Dylan Pyrozik, the great Sarah Pomeroy, the great Lauren Stimpson, Alex Wazik, Brandon Hooker, Jake Pinito, John Shoemaker, James Rose, Seth Wright, Tony Fahey, William James Long. That's Deputy William James Long to you. Thank you very much. Andy Biggs, Chris June, Adam Mihal, the great Gary Snyder, and the handsome Lane Campbell. Thank you. Thank you for supporting the show. I truly appreciate it, you guys. You're the hardcore, diehard supporters, and it doesn't go unnoticed, and I love it. So thank you. That's all I got for you this week, guys. I'll catch you on the flippity flop.